Welcome to Talk Dizzy to Me, the show that brings you a comprehensive look into the complex field of dizziness. Now here are your hosts, vestibular physical therapist Dr. Abby Ross and Dr. Danielle Tolman.
Welcome to another episode of Talk Dizzy to Me. My name is Dr. Danielle Tolman. I'm a vestibular physical therapist, and as always, joined my co-host, Dr. Abby Ross, who is also a vestibular physical therapist and neuroclinical specialist. And today we are joined by two very special guests that we're really excited to talk about this cool project that we're doing with the Vestibular Disorders Association. If you guys listen to our podcast regularly, you know that we are greatly involved with VITA. It's a fantastic organization. A lot of our guests even talk about VITA and how important it is to have them as a part of our community, providing resources and educational material and information for patients and their family members and loved ones suffering from vestibular dysfunction. So welcome, Cynthia Ryan and Kimberly Warner. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And today, we're talking about this new upcoming project called the Life Rebalance Chronicles. Let's jump in. Where did the name come from? What is this? What's going on?
Well, you know, a couple of years ago, VITA went through a sort of, a thought process around how we talk to the vestibular community and to vestibular patients specifically. And those of you who know about vestibular disorders know that there are some people that there's a wide variety of symptoms. Some people suffer from dizziness, some people suffer from imbalance, some people suffer from both. And so it was hard to talk to, it was hard to say, well, we're talking about dizziness because that's not everyone's experience, or we're talking about imbalance because that's not everyone's experience. So we wanted to encapsulate the entire vestibular patient experience in our messaging and in our language. And so one thing that really kind of came to mind is everyone goes through this process of having to, rework their life to adjust to different ways of doing things, essentially to discover a life rebalanced. And that's kind of how that came up. So we like using that term because I think that it's really encapsulating of not only the vestibular patient experience, but other people who, other chronic illness patients and everybody who goes through some sort of an adaptation of, things aren't going the way I expected them to go. I have to learn to do things a new way, a new normal, so to speak. I mean, we all experienced this during the pandemic. And then, Chronicles is what this project is, which we're going to talk about soon, it's chronicling the vestibular patient experience. It's about stories. It's about telling a story through a series of, or through a number of patient stories. So I'll wait to get more into that, but that's how the name came to be.
I love the name, and I think you're so right that this is relatable, not just if you have a vestibular disorder or dysfunction or symptoms. I mean, everyone at some point in their life goes through a shift where they've got to rebalance, and I just love the name. So good job coming up with that, whoever did.
I think Kimberly can really speak to that because she's lived it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, who doesn't want more balance in their life? And balance I'm one of those vestibular patients that doesn't have I've never fallen over. Right now I'm standing and I'm feeling the room, rock back and forth, but I'm not going to fall over, and I never have. So balance has not been one of those like literal words for me. But certainly I have wanted more balance in my life at all kinds of different critical phases and changes. So yeah, it's a good word.
Go ahead,
I was gonna say this is gonna be great, especially now. So Kimberly, you've directed this project, and I think that having a director who has gone through these experiences makes a big difference, where you can sympathize and empathize and kind of know exactly what your subjects are going through. And if all of you watching or listening haven't gone back and watched Kimberly's or listened to Kimberly's episode with us, you should definitely do so to hear about what she has gone through with her diagnosis in the past, which we definitely want to get more into. So what was the intent? So I know we want to talk about and chronicling the patient experience, but I think what's the reason, the question I'm asking is, what's the reason behind this project? Is this to try to make people realize that there's more people out there like them, that they are not alone, they don't need to be isolated?
I think I'll start, and then Kimberly, I think you have a lot to add to this too, but I think it's about getting into the visceral experience of what vestibular patients, and by extension, people with chronic illness go through every day. And it's so real when so we have 9 patients, 9 people, we call them our cast members, but they're real vestibular patients who are sharing their experience on 6 different topics that affect us when we're faced with a chronic illness or some other sort of challenge in our lives. And as they're sharing their experience, they're so authentic and raw and real and vulnerable. And I think that that's what people, connect with. I know I do, and I'm not a vestibular patient, but when I watch these videos, I'm just, I laugh sometimes because some of the experiences are just, they're humorous, and I cry too, because it's just so, it's hard, and it's touching as well. And Kimberly, why don't I pass it off to you?
Well, it's so, as you all know, it's so hard to understand what a vestibular disorder experience is, and it's largely invisible. And I do feel like, there's this term narrative medicine, and I feel like not just physicians, but caregivers and loved ones and other able-bodied people in the community can understand this experience more through their stories. It's not just this like academic article of what a vestibular disorder is, but you can really feel the experience and the depth of challenge that these disorders have on people's lives. And my husband, I've been living with this for 6 years, and he's learned more about what I experience every day just by watching these videos as we go through the series. So I feel really strongly about the power of storytelling, and it really gets into people's hearts. And if we're going to make any changes and raise any awareness in this community and outside of the community, we need people's hearts to be affected just as much as the academic understanding.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about what specific topics you're covering with each individual.
So there are 6 topics. And like I said, it really spans the gamut of how people are affected, and especially people with chronic illness. The first is body. That's pretty obvious. If you have an illness, your body is affected, and there's a lot that goes into that, into adapting to changes in your body, pains or imbalance or dizziness, things that you can no longer do. There's also the mind, and both cognitive processes, because we know, when people talked about this again with COVID, how you get this when your body is processing things, your brain doesn't have as much cognitive power to fuel thought. So you get, kind of this brain fog, this difficulty concentrating, but there are also other, cognitive issues that you're going through when you've gotten a vestibular disorder. There's also spirit, which is really more about, a lot of people just kind of dive into their spiritual experience. Many people discover that they need to find other ways to cope with finding peace in their lives. And they may do that through a gratitude practice, or experiencing peace in nature, or service to others. The fourth is relationships. And that's like one of the most difficult ones. We were just watching the relationship video, and I just think it really, humans are, we're social creatures. And so we really depend on our relationships more than we think. I think we kind of take that for granted oftentimes, but we depend on our relationships for our strength and our feelings of normalcy. And when they're strained because other people don't understand what you're going through, or what we hear so often from vestibular patients is that because they can't do the things they used to do, their friends just stop asking them to do things, and they become socially isolated for that and other reasons. The fifth is self, because we hear that a lot of vestibular patients experience this exploration of how their sense of self has changed because they can no longer do the things that they used to be able to do. For example, David talks about, he was the breadwinner of the family, and he couldn't, he became disabled. He couldn't work, and he couldn't fulfill that role. And that really changed how he felt about himself and that inner struggle. And then life in general, how do we cope with all of these things and move forward in life, not only to like I said, cope, but to thrive. How do people discover new ways to be fulfilled? Kimberly, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's sort of like you've called it, Cynthia, the new normal. And all of us post-pandemic, or I guess we're within it still, but what is that new normal? And how does that shape our future? We haven't asked this one yet of our cast members. They'll be submitting that video in a few weeks, but I'm really interested to hear how I know my new normal is a lot more forgiving of my schedule, of my expectations of myself. And so I'm really curious and I know for myself that that's going to really impact how I move through the world for the next 10, 20, 30 decades, So the new normal can be a really good thing. And it has a lot of adaptations within it. So I'm excited about that episode. That'll be our last one.
Yeah. And just sneak peek, if I can, one of our cast members, her name is Nicole Cure. She's an artist. And I just received an email from her this morning. She's releasing a new series that is all about how she has discovered having to live a slower pace of life and appreciate that. And she's reflecting that in her artwork. And I love, that's one of the things I love about this, is seeing how, how people have had to cope with life and how they express that, whether it's through service or art or whatever.
It's amazing. All those topics sound so encompassing, but it's a great look into how something like this, whether it's chronic illness or vestibular dysfunction, really affects every aspect of your life to some degree. So I like that you guys are highlighting all those different topics. What are the types of conditions that are being highlighted? What does our cast look like for this Chronicle series?
Kimberly, I'll let you talk about that, Cynthia.
Okay. Well, we have a really diverse cast, and we did that on purpose because we want it to speak to everyone, and it's diverse in a number of ways. We brought in people from different countries and different nationalities, different cultures, different genders, and also different diagnoses. So the diagnoses range from malvodebarkment to vestibular migraine to cervicogenic dizziness to stroke and Meniere's disease. So we have 9 cast members, as we call them, and each one has at least one, but some of them have multiple conditions. Autoimmune inner ear disease is another one. So it really, and they're also in different, at different levels of functioning. Some of them are really impacted on an everyday level. Lynn, for example, has such severe imbalance. She can't walk without some sort of assistive device. And while others are much more functional and, maybe are affected more episodically, we have, some very young, early 20s people in there who, which, and I think that really speaks to, oh my God, can you imagine being diagnosed with a chronic disorder in your early 20s, knowing that you're going to have this for the rest of your life? I mean, that's just really incredibly powerful to me.
And we have young mothers, 2 young mothers. Mm-hmm. So there's that phase that they're grappling with. Sandy was at a pretty stable place prior to becoming pregnant, and now we text each other a lot because we share diagnoses. And so we're kind of like, what medication are you on now? And I think that she's definitely had an increase in symptoms in postpartum, and that's brought up a lot of grief again. And so it's pretty remarkable to have such a wide, diverse group of cast members.
Yeah, and what's so cool too, I haven't seen, of course, any sneak peeks or anything, but I would imagine that even though the cast is so diverse, there's some sort of thread woven between each of them that brings them all together in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just with one topic or across all 6. But then we can expand that further. I mean, the topics that you chose are broad enough and relatable enough, again, to reach an audience beyond just vestibular symptoms. So when we think about who will be watching these chronicles, who are we thinking about for how we can all relate to this, and who will benefit from watching?
Well, first, I just have to do a shout out to Kimberly, because this is the magic of filmmaking that is really constantly amazing to me with each episode that comes out, is how so how this is put together is each cast member is given this the topic and a little overview of what to talk about, and then they send in a 5-minute video of themselves. They film themselves, and then Kimberly takes those 9 5-minute videos and makes 1 10-minute video out of them. So there's a lot that you have to really figure out, okay, what really comes to the surface here. But then the way she pieces it together, it's like people are finishing each other's sentences. Literally, it's really amazing how, I mean, these people aren't talking amongst themselves to decide that we should be talking, this is how I feel, how do you feel, in advance. There's no communication in advance. They just naturally come out with the same themes, and Kimberly can put that together in such a way to show that continuity. So I just think that that's really magical.
It's so fun. It's one of my favorite parts about editing these, because there is a common thread. And oh my gosh, I mean, it just happened yesterday. Sneak preview here, I'm not giving anything away, but when they're talking about self, Steve talked about feeling trapped, and he actually kind of positioned himself in a space where he had like these doors closed on him. And then Sandy, about 24 hours later, sent her video in, and she said, I just feel trapped. And I'm like, oh, there's one of those moments, one of those sentences that just comes together. And now, we still have 6 more videos to come in. And who else is going to say that word trapped? And like, they're trapped in their bodies. So it's very exciting.
So it's amazing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cynthia.
No, you go ahead, Danielle.
Oh, I was just going to say, it sounds really, it's very interesting to, as clinicians, we hear a common thread every single time somebody comes in through the door, but to then be able to have people visualize it and see that there is a common thread among patients is just not only amazing, but I think that this is going to be great for family members, friends, loved ones to also get a window into what's going on in these people's lives. I mean, for some, spouses or support systems might not be as easy to believe that what's going on is real because they can't see it. It's not tangible. They have no insight as to what maybe their loved one is going through. And I think this type of a project, seeing a large cast like this all have something very similar to say across so many different broad diagnoses and spectrums of these disorders, is going to be enlightening for people to just kind of get a window or a glimpse into what these patients live with. I mean, I've been talking about vestibular things for years now and obsessing over it. And it wasn't until recently that my mom experienced her first vestibular migraine where she goes, "Oh my gosh, you need to help as many people as you can. I had no idea what this felt like. I hope I never have this again. That was so scary. I can't believe people do this every day." And it wasn't until she had something that she actually got it, even though she's been following, all of the stuff that we've been doing here to help raise awareness. Sometimes you need something like this project to open up a window into people's lives to have a better understanding. And I think that these videos are not only going to reach the people who are experiencing this on a daily basis, but the support network around those patients and help them understand their loved one, their friend, their family member a little bit better, which is one of the most amazing things that you can do.
Yeah, and that gets to your question, Abby. Who do we want to reach with these? And I think we want to reach different audiences in different ways. Vestibular patients are going to look at these and go, "That's me. I totally relate to that. I get that." And then friends and family are going to go, "Whoa, I had no idea." And because there is such a visceral reaction to them, it really will. It's more than just learning facts. That's what we've been trying to do up to this point. Is we present scientific evidence that explains the vestibular patient experience, but this is more of a visceral experience, and also the general public. We've been saying we want to make vestibular visible. People, they don't get that big fancy word vestibular, and we want to equate vestibular to dizziness and imbalance in a way that so that the general public will understand. And think of all those videos that you see on YouTube, on Facebook, on social media, that they're topics that you don't have a personal involvement in, but it opens your eyes to what is being experienced by people all over the world. We see videos about people struggling with a disease, or struggling in poverty, or struggling with homelessness, and that helps you to relate to that and to have empathy for those people and for others in general. And I think that people, even people who are not personally connected to this community, will have that reaction to these videos.
Sure. And I was also thinking about how beneficial could this be for an employee to provide to their employer?
Yeah.
Or we were going to speak on this at some point today, so I might as well bring it up now. Other healthcare professionals,
Yeah.
whether it's,
That's my hope.
yeah, clinics that treat vestibular disorders all the time, or even beyond that, primary care physicians, neurologists, anyone in the healthcare professional, in terms of empathy and really understanding. I think these videos will be very powerful.
That's, I was just at an eye doctor appointment last week, and he knows that Veda and has actually spoken with Veda a few times. And he said he wants to do a screening for all of his staff. So I want to encourage clinics to just hold these screenings, because there can be Q&As afterwards. They're short enough to, create little events around them. And I think it would be really great for clinics to come together and have these discussions, watch them, and then have discussions afterwards.
Yeah, that comes to what you were saying before, Kimberly, about narrative medicine. And so Kimberly and I are each working separately with different groups to try to get these officially incorporated into the curriculum, the healthcare education curriculum in some way. And I'm sure that you and your audience can really relate to that. It's one thing to understand from an academic point of view what's going on with a patient with certain symptoms. It's another thing to really get what they're going through, and that's so important to developing empathy for your patients. And I know not only from personal experience, but from what I have from research that I've read and from patients that I've talked to, that it's that patient healthcare professional doctor relationship that means so much to the success of that patient's recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, half the battle is just finding someone that will listen to you and point you in the right direction and even believe you. It's unfortunate. There are some clinicians out there who really don't have a grasp on vestibular dysfunction and really won't go to that sort of diagnosis or that direction because they don't really think that it's as big of a problem as it is. So, sometimes just finding the right person to listen and to hear what's going on, but not only to that, but to sympathize and empathize and truly know makes a big difference in a patient's care. So I have a feeling that this project will do a great job of kind of sparking those conversations and hopefully getting the word out there for people to really get a better understanding of just what is going on with this patient population. I like it.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
I was just going to say, Cynthia, you reminded me, you said, one of the missions of Veda is to make the invisible visible. And it made me think of one of the fun things that we've been doing with these videos that wasn't really planned originally, but we realized that, okay, we want to access as many audience members as possible. We want to engage them. And often, just talking heads, people kind of check out after 4 minutes or 5 minutes. And so we also are visualizing some of these experiences in a real kind of elegant, artistic way. We have another team member. She's we call her our segment producer. And she's taking scenarios and storyboarding these little vignettes of the experience. So we're not always just seeing the cast members sitting in their living rooms talking. We're seeing these very artistic sort of scenes of a person walking through their life and experiencing these things. So it's become very visible, and I love that. It will probably, those people that drop off after 4 minutes, they'll stay maybe for 5 minutes.
So what has it been like working on this project for you, Kimberly, having vestibular dysfunction and having this in your background, but then approaching this project with this cast itself? What has that been like for you?
Oh, life-changing. There's so many different levels. On the just basic physical level, it's been challenging. Screens are still continue to be my kryptonite, and I intended to go into this project not editing them all myself. That was not my intention, but I am a perfectionist. And once I started seeing these stories come in, I was like, give them to me. I have to make sure this is done right. So I am challenged physically by this. And so I'm really looking forward to giving my brain a break after this releases. But it's also helped me cope a little bit more, and listening to all of them, I have learned coping strategies. I have found solidarity for sure, but I've also learned from them. And the biggest thing is I think I kind of gave up. The whole unfixed term that I talked about in your previous episode, I had to come to a place of acceptance within myself. And part of that was just to stop pursuing treatments. And listening to these cast members, they haven't given up hope. And a lot of them have improved, and they're not better as in like perfect, but they're definitely better and more functioning. And so I went back to the Veda website. I'm like, gosh darn it, you know, I haven't been to a vestibular PT in 6 years. So I went back and I found an incredible person who's like 20 minutes from me. So it has been, and he's brought my levels down. You know, and maybe it's just a miracle, but it's been 3 months now, and I would say I'm hovering more at a 1 or a 2, whereas before I was a 3 or a 4. So I have learned so much from this group of people, and having a sense of purpose is what gets me out of bed in the morning. And you know, I think someday when I'm on my deathbed and if I'm still rocking, bobbing, and swaying, I will say it has all been worth it because of this type of work. So I'm extremely grateful to be part of it.
That's awesome. I mean, I feel like I have chills right now because it's so cool that you, as a person with vestibular symptoms, has put this all together. And I have to say, Danny, Cynthia, and I probably would have said the same thing. If it were us, we would have grabbed those videos and wanted to edit them ourselves too. You said something that is similar to something Dr. Cho had said in our last episode. And one of the things she talked about was that how people with chronic conditions, you know, they've had these symptoms for a long time. Sometimes they eventually make it to their office and they haven't tried something like vestibular therapy. I'll always encourage people with chronic symptoms, even if you saw a vestibular physical therapist years ago, your symptoms change, your level of function changes. So it's always good to maintain that relationship, even if you're not having a formal visit. I like when my patients come back in an email and update me on their life. Doesn't even have to pertain necessarily to symptoms, but just let me know how you're doing. So I'm so happy to hear that you're giving it a shot again and that it's seemed to be beneficial so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been amazing. And, you know, we're all a community, so we share with each other. When something works for someone, we pass it along. It gets spread around on social media. And so the more that we can share our progress and our stories, the more that we can all benefit.
Yeah, I think that's so true.
Andre, who is our patient or our community resource coordinator, she answers phone calls and emails from people who are calling and reaching out to Veda asking for help. And there was a woman who had, you know, been through the ringer and had symptoms for many years and had been to many different doctors and tried many different things. And, you know, Andre was trying to lead her through the kind of process that we recommend for people. And she's like, well, I've done all that. I've tried all of that. And I'm like, just go back to her and say, try again. Because so often, as you said, it's trying at a different time or finding the right provider. You know, she may have seen a physical therapist, but not a physical therapist who was trained in vestibular care. And that makes such a difference no matter what kind of provider you're talking about, to find the provider who A, is specially trained in vestibular medicine, and B, who cares, who wants to help you and wants to shepherd you through the medical discovery process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of all of this. You know, one thing that Kimberly had mentioned is, you know, being able to share all these experiences. And we have some opportunities coming up for people to get to preview or hear from the cast before our big release date. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Sure. Sure. Well, we're doing everything we can to let people know about this. And one of the things we'll be doing, and it actually starts the week right after our release. So the first video will come out on the Disorders channel on August 10th. And I'm going to let Kimberly talk about that because she has a relationship with the Disorders channel for her other project. And then a week later, on August 17th, we'll be releasing the video on the VITA website, vestibular.org/LRC for Life Rebalanced Chronicles. And so we'll be releasing one a week. There are 6 videos. We'll be releasing one a week in the weeks leading up to Balance Awareness Week, which is VITA's signature annual event that's all about raising awareness about vestibular disorders. So we want people to get a taste, to see what it's about, and then for me, when I saw the first one, I'm like, I would like to know more about these people, because it's like with any, I don't know if this is a good thing to say, but it's like with a TV show, you get to know the characters and you want to know more about them. So, so we'll have Meet the Staff or Meet the Cast Facebook Live starting August 23rd, I think it is. And we'll have 3 cast members each time talking about their experience, talking about themselves and their diagnostic experience, their coping and living experience, and why it's important to them to participate in this project, because it is for each one of them. They're each one a true ambassador for the vestibular community, because they really want to raise awareness about what it's like to live with a vestibular disorder. Kimberly, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, and then prior to the release with VEDA, there will be a 1-week exclusive debut window with the Disorder channel, and they are a fantastic channel. If anybody has an Amazon Roku or Amazon Fire or Roku, you can access the Disorder channel, and there are incredible feature films, short films, all based on rare disease, invisible disease, chronic conditions, and they're just beautiful, touching stories. It was it originated as a film festival that was created by 2 dads that had children that have children with rare diseases. And so it was called the Rare Disease Film Festival. And then they turned this into a big, official channel. So just like Netflix, you can go on and pick your content, but on the Disorder channel, it's all relating to certain, diseases and chronic illnesses. So all of the Life Rebalanced Chronicles will live on there indefinitely, but they will have a 1-week exclusive debut window there. So that's really fun for us to have that different type of audience that might not stumble upon this through VITA or through YouTube or whatever.
I had never heard of that before, so I'll definitely check that out. I love real stories. Anytime I'm picking a show, I always want something that's real and relatable. So this would be perfect, and that channel sounds perfect. We thank you both so much for coming on the show. We can't wait for this to get released. We'll be sure to post it on our social media platforms to get more people to watch. And any last touches to this episode? Anything you want to add?
Kimberly, you go first.
Oh gosh. Well, I just hope we get as many eyeballs and hearts on to join us in this endeavor, because I feel so strongly about it. And I think there's something for everybody. As I love what Sandy, one of our cast members, said in Spirit Rebalanced. She said she's learned how to find inner stillness even while her world is always moving. And who doesn't need more inner stillness in their lives? So there is something for everybody to learn from in these episodes.
I want to just put a shout out to all of our cast members for not only putting in the time, but really opening themselves up and being willing to be vulnerable and share what some of their very deep inner struggles with the world. It's really, and it's not always easy to do. And also just reiterate that I really think that these are really moving, impactful stories. And so grab a tissue and your friends and And please share them, because this is how we raise awareness. You know, I know that these are going to speak to so many people, and I know that vestibular patients are going to watch them, and I hope that they're going to get their families to watch them. But I also know that they could be so much more impactful in making vestibular visible if people share them. That's how it works.
We'll be sure to put in our show notes the dates and times of some of these upcoming Meet the Cast live events, when things are going to be released, where you can find them. And I will also finish up with another shameless plug for Vita. You know, in the last year, there has been a lot of new, amazing approaches and different types of content that have been put together, produced, and put out by the staff of Vita, by volunteers of Vita. And it's because we've got this great network of people that just keep growing and growing. And we wouldn't be able to do it without donations and without volunteers. I really encourage you to go to vestibular.org and check everything out that's on that website. It is endless. I'm still finding things that I didn't know was there. And I've used this almost every single day since I graduated from PT school almost 7 years ago. Please check out vestibular.org. Check out the resources. If you feel like you can contribute in some way, whether with donation or volunteer, there is a ton of information that can give you more information on how you can contribute and be a helpful member of this community. So please check out vestibular.org. Look in our show notes for the links to find everything that we talked about today. And please watch the Life Rebalance Chronicles. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Cynthia and Kimberly, for joining us today. And we hope to talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much.
If you're interested in finding us on social media or the web, you can visit www.vestibular.today for more resources, including testing, treatment, and educational videos, blogs, continuing education classes, and resources including clinic equipment recommendations, suggested tests, and BPPV treatment charts.
Search Vestibular Today and Balancing Act Rehab on all social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Also, be sure to check out Balancing Act Rehab at www.balancingactrehab.com, especially if you think you would benefit from vestibular therapy. We are your girls. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace the care provided by your qualified health professional or to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on Talk Dizzy to Me. Please contact us at Balancing Act Rehab if you think you could benefit from vestibular therapy.